Right, welcome back to Inclusive Design 24 2019, brought to you in partnership with our gold supporters, Barclays Access and Intopia. Don't forget, you can subscribe to Inclusive Design 24 on YouTube by visiting youtube.com/Inclusive Design 24 and hit that subscribe button. You can follow ID24Conf on Twitter. And if you have questions for the presenters, tweet them using the ID24 hashtag, and we'll ask them at the end of the session. A reminder that ID24 is a respectful community with a code of conduct available at inclusivedesign24.org /2019/code of conduct.
Next up, we have Sam Latif with a talk, Why Inclusive Design. Over to you, Sam.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Sam Latif. I am going to share with you my personal and professional journey of why inclusive design is important for someone like me who has a disability, and the life-changing impact that if something is designed inclusively can have on your life. What am I doing?
Technology transformed my life personally. Ever since I lost my sight at school in a drama class, technology has been vital to how I access the world around me. Technology was the reason I wanted to work in a global company like Procter & Gamble and really transform the way business was done using technology. What I love about a technology-driven career at P&G is that it's a journey of discovery. We want to use STEM to make our products, our packaging, our environment totally accessible for everybody. One of my personal highlights in my career has been bringing the insight into the company that there's millions of people around the world who have low or no vision, and that's actually exaggerated when people are in the shower when they don't wear their contacts or glasses. I made a recommendation to the company to invent tactile markings on bottles that would help you differentiate by touch shampoo from conditioner. We came up with a very simple way to implement this using laser technology. I was able to physically lift the bottles off the line. The feeling was just electric. I had been thinking that for many, many years. P&G had actually opened the doors to enable this to actually happen. I'm the first woman in my family to go through university and have a career. Being a woman at P&G has never posed any barriers. I've been personally enabled to have the freedom to go and discover and look in places that have never been explored before. I feel like I've got a great balance. I feel like I'm a great mum. I do the best at work. All the things that are very important to me, I feel I can achieve them with a career at P&G.
So for me, this quote, some of you may already be familiar with, really resonates with me, and it's by the Dean of Harvard Business School, who says, diversity is about inviting someone to the party, and inclusion is actually when you're asking them to dance. And the story of my career at P&G has been that, I added diversity to this company for maybe 16 years, but for the last 3 or 4 years, it's when I've felt that I've actually been dancing, that I can actually give back, and I'm totally, included in how the company operates, which is absolutely amazing. And why is this important? So just a quiz for you. I wanted to ask you, what is the fastest growing household segment in the world? So we have 18, under 18, 30 to 40-year-olds, 50 plus. And the answer is that 50 plus is the fastest and largest growing household segment. So what does that mean, and why is it important? Well, firstly, people are living longer. We all know that. And we all know that as you're getting older, in particular when you're over the age of 50, you start developing one or more disabilities. So, whether it's cognitive or vision or dexterity, strength, or a combination of all that. And we know that 1 in 3 people over the age of 50 do actually have multiple disabilities. So as a company, as a business, we need to be mindful and be able to serve these consumers. And as individuals, we need to be able to live as independently as possible for as long as possible. So inclusive design is the key that will make this happen. So there's now I wanted to share this idea of disability being on 2 spectrums. So the first spectrum is a time-based spectrum. So on one end of the spectrum, the disability can be temporary. If you're a parent who's had a newborn, you've not been sleeping well for a while, and that impacts on your mental health. Or if you've twisted or sprained your ankle, you might be on crutches for a little while. On the other end of the spectrum is permanent disability. So if you're born blind, or if you become blind, or if you've had an accident that makes you have some kind of disability, it will be permanent, and it can be, it will be with you all your life. So that's the first spectrum. The second spectrum is the severity of the disability, from mild to strong or to severe. So, for example, you might have mild vision loss or mild arthritis in your hands, or you might be completely blind or have no ability to use your hand. So I think it's really important to recognise that there are 1.7 billion people in the world who do have a disability, and they're on these spectrums of either temporary, permanent, mild, or severe. So why is it important? Not just the right thing to do, but from a business point of view, why should companies care? Only 4% of companies today are actually thinking about creating products that will serve the needs of these people with disabilities, 1.7 billion. And I think this is really a white space, major opportunity for companies to think differently. And here's why. So if you think about the so if you imagine an axis, on the x-axis you have people's experiences, and on the y-axis you have the number of people. So when you're using a product or a service, you will have users of your product or service who fall into 3 broad categories. The first one is people who find it super easy to use your product. So let's think of computers. Younger generations all seem to be born with a computer chip. They know how to use everything, iPhones, computers, so easily. And then in the middle category, you have people who find it frustrating or difficult, but they can still use it. So some people who, they can only use their phone for certain tasks. They're trying their best, but they don't get the most out of the experience because they find it quite hard. And then the third section of users are people who find it impossible to use your product or service. And that might be because they just simply cannot access it. If you think about certain websites or apps that, if you're blind, for example, it's just not possible to book a flight on one of the, like Skyscanner, BA, whatever it might be. You just can't do it, even if you wanted to. So the idea about inclusive design is the challenge is to remove the people who find it impossible to use your product into the category of people who find it easy, or or at least difficult but possible, right? And if you do that, you're actually growing the number of users that are able to use your product. So the more people that can use your product, the more opportunity for growing your business, because you've got more users. So, in very simple terms, if there's 1.7 billion people in the world, and if your product is designed accessibly, you are opening up your business to that size of market, if you're a global business. So what do these innovations have in common? Text messaging, fingerprint unlock for phones, captioning, and personal assistant devices like Alexa. I think the answer is that these innovations were all generated by and or for people with disabilities. Things like the fingerprint unlock. I had the opportunity to go to Apple in the US, and what they told me was that the unlock feature with your fingerprint was inspired by a blind person, a blind employee who she found it hard to type in the number to unlock her phone. So the engineers did a little test and created the fingerprint unlock, and they created a one-off thing for this blind employee. But of course, everybody wanted that because it was simple for everyone, not just her. Similarly, with devices like Alexa, what Amazon have found is that disproportionately people with disabilities are buying, using, loving these devices, and it's making people super independent. So it's just some examples that you might already know. So why am I so passionate about inclusive design, and how have I turned it into my day job? So I wanted to share my journey with you guys. So I, at the age of 4, was diagnosed with a condition called retinitis pigmentosa. Basically, my parents were informed that by the time I'm a teenager, I might not be able to see. What I can see was like a narrow field of vision, like a window which was very blurry and very narrow. And so the first thing that the school gave me were magnifying glasses. And if I didn't wear the magnifying glasses, I could read 6 words a minute. 6 words a minute. If I put on the magnifying glasses, I couldn't read I could read less than 6 words a minute. Why? Because they enlarged everything for me, and it meant that my tunnel, my field, was even narrower, so I could read fewer words. And it wasn't an inclusive product for me. It wasn't the right product. And I used to have to look over the top of my glasses to read my book, because I didn't have the courage to tell them that this was the wrong device for me. So if you fast forward a little bit, by the time I was a teenager, age of 16, I couldn't read anything at all. My window had become even more blurrier, and although I could see light, I could not read. I may be able to have been able to see the words, but not read them anymore. They were just like a blurry patch on the page. And so I asked my teachers to record the information off the blackboard onto something called a cassette. I don't know how young you all are. I don't know if you all know what a cassette was, but it was like the technology of the time. And the teacher used to record books or chapters onto cassette, bits from the blackboard onto cassette, and that was my way of taking in the information to listen, and that was my way of reading. And that was kind of good. It was the best I had because I could take the tape home, listen to it. But what would happen was a couple of things. One, I would fall asleep. Or two, if I didn't fall asleep, I would try and find a particular part in my notes, but I couldn't jump to chapter 5 or page 62. I would have to fast forward, rewind, and quite often I would damage the tape because I was trying to find the bit that I needed to listen to. So it was useful, but it wasn't very inclusive. By the time I was heading to university, I was using many assistive gadgets, and on the market were things like clunky, ugly talking watches, talking dictionaries, talking this and talking that. But it was very clunky, chunky, not very attractive, not nice. And so although there was a product that was designed to work for me, it wasn't very inclusive. It didn't make me feel part of society. I felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. If I wanted to check the time in a room, everybody in the room would know that I was checking the time, and it was now 10:16 or whatever the time was. So it was useful, but not so inclusive. The game changer for me, what really gave me the, I guess, motivation to realize, I think it was the realization that the world can be and needs to become more inclusive. So many years ago when I worked at P&G, the CIO at the time came to hear that there was a blind employee in the company, me, who couldn't use a smartphone, whereas everybody else in the company were using they were kind of smartphones like Blackberries at the time. But I couldn't use one, which meant that I wasn't able to check my calendar on the go. I couldn't check my emails on the go. And someone told this to the CIO, and his name's Filippo. And what happened was Filippo had commissioned a project for a senior project manager in the company to go and investigate what technologies were out there for blind people, or how we could make a smartphone work for the blind. And so there was a big project that was underway that I was oblivious to. And then one day I got contacted by this guy called Mark from Australia, and he said, "Sam, we're looking into finding you a smartphone." And then he recommended a couple of phones, including the iPhone. And I remember my instant reaction was, no way. There's no way I'm using a flat screen phone. It's never going to work. As much as I'd love to, I don't think I can. And that was kind of what I said to him. And he then said, but, the CIO, Filippo, has actually asked us to run this project. We would really appreciate it if you could just give it a go in any case. And that changed my mind about trying out the iPhone. And it was the best thing I ever did. It totally changed my life. It was a steep learning curve for me. It took me a couple of months to get it up and running and learning all the gestures. However, it was life-changing. It was for the first time I had a phone, same as everyone else. It felt good, just to be able to do so many things on there. No longer did I need that awful talking watch or a talking dictionary or anything like that, because that was all done through my phone. No longer was I sitting in the car hoping to get from A to B with my husband, who was not very good with his directions. I could actually now give him directions to get from A to B. The phone was so empowering, and for me, that gave me the inspiration to go and do something about inclusive design inside of P&G. So just to take a step back, I wanted to tell you about my journey to P&G as well. So, my day one, I'll call it here, but basically I never thought of applying to Procter & Gamble. It wasn't on my radar. I had applied to several global companies in the past, and their recruitment process was not inclusively designed, and their people were not aware of how to interview someone with a disability. So because of this terribly designed process, you would experience really profound discrimination. And so I had some experience, so I was working in Scotland for Scotland's largest car retailer, and I got asked to apply to Procter & Gamble through an agency. I did, and the process was made quite accessible for me. So even though their general process wasn't accessible, they had adapted it to make it accessible for me to apply. I applied, got the job, but then I turned it down because I'm first generation Scottish Pakistani girl, and it wasn't the done thing for an Asian girl to leave home before she got married to work for a global company in London. So from Scotland to London, it's like an hour plane ride away, for those who don't know. So my parents didn't want me to join this company, and so I told the company, I don't want to, I can't join, I'm sorry. And they actually, like the guy who was recruiting, his name is Mike. Mike was the one who wanted to recruit more people with disabilities into Procter & Gamble, and the reason was that he had a son with cerebral palsy, and he realised that he needs to do something about seeing more disabled people in employment, and so he heavily invested in, trying to recruit more disabled people into P&G. So he called my parents. He called me and asked me if he could speak to my parents, talk to them. He flew someone up to Scotland from Procter & Gamble to, have a cup of tea, talk to my mum and dad, and give them reassurance that they will look out for me. And so my parents were a little taken aback, like, wow, and my dad said to me, like, well, if they've done all this, then maybe you should go for 6 months to P&G and see how it goes. So that was when I got into P&G. And then my day one, I assumed I could just plug in JAWS, and JAWS is my screen reading software. I thought I could plug in JAWS and I would be able to read emails and start looking at the internet and do my job. And I was so wrong, so wrong. Nothing really worked. JAWS would break, or Outlook would break, or internet would break on a daily basis, several times a day. I couldn't read any documents. I couldn't even read emails. I didn't know how to contact people. And on top of that, my manager would tell me 6 months into my job, Sam, you're not performing like your peers. You'll need to, do better, or you'll need to leave. And every time I took my computer to IT support, the IT folk would hide under the table, or they would do they would run. They didn't really know what to do. They would try and pacify me, and we could never get to the core of the problem. And so maybe 9 months into my job at P&G, I decided to leave. And so I went to Mike and said, thanks for the opportunity, but I actually want to resign now and leave. And Mike said to me, Sam, what would it take to keep you, to sort your IT problems? Like, he goes, I don't know what we can do, but I need you to help me so that we can put something into place to make this work. I really want to make this work. And I said to him, and I didn't ever think this would ever happen, so I just said to him, look, Mike, I need my own designated IT person that can help solve my problems, and to be available as and when I need. And within 24 hours, I got my own designated IT person called Paul, who's with the company until this day. And Paul was the most amazing IT support person you can ever find. You just want to clone him. He's amazing. So Paul took the time, the interest to figure out what the problems were. And, within a few months, instead of seeing him 10 times a day, I would see him, once a day, once a week, once a month. And now I don't even see him once a year, because everything's so much more stable. But it allowed me to have a level playing field, with my peers, because finally I was able to read emails, internet. I had systems in place that were designed to make me part of like every other employee, and that was so important. Like sometimes the design, out the box, if it doesn't work, we need to think of ways of modifying our processes to make them more inclusive, as well as products and services in companies. So if you then think about a decade later, I was flying at P&G. I was running multiple IT businesses. I was in charge of our Hugo Boss perfume business, our Gucci businesses, Pampers, hair care, and then finally I was running the Europe IT portfolio for P&G. Before, and at the same time, I started expanding the people with disabilities employee resource group into Europe. And as I was doing that, I was getting P&G people to experience what it was like to have a disability and interact with our products, so that we could actually improve our products as well. And whilst doing that, I got the opportunity to do the same thing with our CEO and some really senior leadership in the company. And I put forward a business case to say that we have a business building opportunity by making our products, our packaging, our advertising accessible and inclusive to everybody, and we can grow our business like this. But we haven't done that as a company. We've only focused on women, black and ethnic minority, and socio-economic factors, but not disability. And I think this is a missed opportunity for P&G. So a week later, I got called up by someone from the C-suite who offered me my current role. In the beginning, we called it Inclusive Design Consultant for a few years, and now I'm known as the Company Accessibility Leader. And basically, there's the three kind of pillars: the workplace, making our employees, everything for our employees accessible, and then for our consumers, making our products, packaging, and communication accessible. So, a few things that we've done in the workplace area are, like, our recruitment process is accessible. We've introduced some neurodiversity recruitment into the company. We've streamlined the recruitment process. So if you do have a disability, you don't have to go through all the, there's accommodations you can ask for, and we can simplify the recruitment process. So some people may not be comfortable or able to have a normal standard interview, so we make some adjustments to that. And we have made some of our buildings more accessible. So our headquarters in Cincinnati, Ohio, our main door into the building had very ornate, heavy doors that had to be pushed, and it was quite heavy to push for everybody, but it meant that some of our colleagues in wheelchairs couldn't get through the front door, and we've replaced them and turned them into automatic doors. We've got disabled parking in all of our offices, and we've actually trained our reception and security staff to be there for people who need help to get around, which is working out really, really well. The product and packaging inclusion, we have introduced workshops that for every business in the company, and we're getting them to really get insights in what it's like when you can't see, or when you can't use your hands so well, or if you have learning difficulties, what it's like to interact with our products. And we get insights from that, and we implement them into our products. So you saw the video for the Herbal Essences project. So that has been really instrumental for me, and as an individual. It's always been a frustration not knowing what my bottles are at home. I always got things muddled up. I used to use elastic bands and things like that. Now I don't need any of that. We can, there's 4 tactile stripes at the back of the Herbal Essences bottles and 8 tactile circles. And the way the media have chosen to tell people to remember that, it wasn't my idea, but it's a good one. Stripes are for shampoo, S for stripes, S for shampoo, and then the circles are conditioner. And so we launched that in the US earlier this year. And today, actually, we're celebrating World Sight Day again, and we're doing some extra things on Herbal Essences, where we've created a skill for the Alexa. It's just a new way for people to find out what the different range of herbal essences are, how to use, or figure out what the best product is for their hair type, whether it's oily, dry, curly, straight kind of hair. And we're making all of our websites accessible too. And for me, I'm hoping that the Herbal Essences stripes and circles become like a standard. The way the there's a dot on the number 5 keypad for on ATMs or any kind of keypad where you enter a PIN number, there's a raised dot on the 5. I would love every shampoo and conditioner bottle to have the raised stripes and circles so that everybody just knows which one's shampoo and which one's conditioner. We're not the first company to do this. There's loads of great examples out there. Apple, I talked about Apple already. It's like the Tesla are working on driverless cars. OXO has been they grew their business 15-fold by just modifying a potato peeler and stuff in the kitchen. And the inspiration behind that was that the owner's wife used to make the owner, Sam Farmer, apple pie, but she refused to make it because she started getting arthritis in her hands and found that the old-fashioned potato peeler, a metal piece of material, used to hurt her hands. So Sam then created this adapted potato peeler, which has now become the norm because it's ergonomically so much easier to hold and it's much more comfortable. So in return, he was able to get more apple pie, and his wife had a happier experience peeling her apples for the apple pie. So then I talked about workplace, I've talked about product and packaging. So the communication, accessibility. I wanted to talk quickly about advertising. We're making our advertising accessible as well with captioning and audio description, and we've been trailblazing in this space because a lot of the TV broadcasters, although they could broadcast programs and films with audio description, they did not have the capability to broadcast audio described adverts. So I worked with the industry to enable them to create the pipes and then put the legislation in place to get audio description as part of advertising. And websites already mentioned, and also social media, we're making that accessible. So for the websites, I feel like you guys are at the experts here, but this slide here shows side-by-side comparison of a website that's not accessible. So this is the awareness that I'm raising within the company to say, on the left, we have how JAWS sees a website, and on the right, it's the actual website. And what you see is that the headings that JAWS picks up are different to the headings that a normal sighted person picks up. And there's no need for that, really. This is just a badly designed website, and it wouldn't cost much more It just takes a bit more common sense and implementing some standard guidelines to really reconcile the both and make them equal, to improve the consumer experience. So what's it like to watch an ad when you can't see? I'm going to let you have this experience and try and guess what this ad could be. Wonder how many people guessed the ad. Now I'm going to play the ad with audio description. So this is now how blind people can see them.
A tiny baby sleeps peacefully, with a drip attached, her eyes open narrowly. A nurse talks to the mother as the father leans anxiously on an incubator looking at the baby. A Pampers premature nappy is put on the baby. Every day is a fight when you arrive early. And we're proud in your corner. The premature baby is driven home fit and well. The only premature nappy donated to hospitals, Pampers.
So that's just an example of one of our ads with audio description, and we are, it would be great if every ad came with audio description. It does not cost too much. It's a very, very tiny fraction of the price when you do audio description. It's just awareness in companies. And that goes down to almost everything I've talked about today. I think that no matter what industry you work in, no matter what you guys do, I think we've all got it in us to make the world much more inclusive just by becoming more insightful about one person's needs and making sure that every individual, if you can just solve for one, you can solve for many, and just understanding the difference that people bring and using that to your advantage to improve your product, your packaging, or your advertising, or any service that you provide. So that's it from me. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, and looking forward to any questions or feedback. And thank you for Leonie and the whole team for giving me the opportunity to talk today.
Well, thank you very much, Sam. That was an amazing talk. And Hans, have we got any questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions. What are the biggest inclusive design goals you would like to see Procter & Gamble achieve in the future? Is there any specific products that are on your radar? Like what's your next shampoo bottle going to be?
Well, for the next all of my vision, and we're on a journey, Hans, it's that every P&G shampoo brand will have the tactile stripes, and every conditioner will have the circles. So whether that's Herbal Essences, Pantene, Head & Shoulders, or Aussie, or any other brand that we have, we will put those on there. And there's a technical challenge, and we're figuring out how to do it, but that's what we would like to do. And the other thing, we're making our pregnancy tests inclusive as well. So you might see this on social media today as well. There's a press release going out. But we also own Clear Blue, the pregnancy test. And up until recently, blind women like myself were not able to independently read their pregnancy test. So, you either had to ask a family member or a friend, which means that family member or friend knows your news before you know your news. And this is very private and personal, and it's not something that you would want other people in your circle of family and friends to know. And so the alternative was to go to a doctor or, I don't know, it's not been easy. And so now what we're doing is we've partnered with Be My Eyes and Be My Eyes is an app that blind people can use and sighted people can also volunteer. But Be My Eyes now have a clear blue button, and so if a blind person chooses, if they want their pregnancy test read independently, they can, through Be My Eyes, call clear blue agents who can not only read their result independently to them, but also check that the test has been done accurately. So we're launching that today. Yeah.
Next question. Based on your personal experience, what advice would you give to parents of children with disabilities similar to yours that you had as a child?
I think parents of people with children with disabilities, I think my first piece of advice would be that try and integrate as much as possible with the, quote, normal society, normal schooling, if it's possible, but also having a network of friends and people who do also have similar disabilities to you, so that you have both a circle of friends with disabilities that you can ask for advice and help, but also just with going to a normal school, integrating with normal people who are maybe not being impacted directly with disability, but by being friends with them, helping to make integration much better and easier, which is helpful for everybody.
Yeah, and I think it's also common for parents to kind of settle in the idea of the limitations that the child is going to have, when instead they could just be trying to reach more goals, and they'll be surprised that they can actually achieve a lot more. So I think that fits in with what you said about having mainstream schools and things like that.
Yeah. And introducing the child to role models if possible as well with similar disabilities. I think it's really helpful to have that role model.
Right, definitely. Next question. What can companies do to make their application process more accessible to applicants with disabilities? Like you mentioned that Procter & Gamble had adapted their current process to be more suitable to you. Like, how would you recommend other companies achieve a similar thing?
I think first, to be open and willing to accept that your process may not be accessible in the first place, so to admit it. And secondly, then to get the green light that that we do need to change it, so that people are not reluctant. Because what you'll find is that people are usually only reluctant to change because they think they don't have the authority to change it. So if you can get the green light from as high up as possible, that this, and accept that your process will not. If you think that your recruitment process is not accessible, you're probably right. So then, if you have people with disabilities in your company already, working with them to double check is a good idea. Or, you can contract one of the disability organizations to come and help you assess it. But basically, you can check your website with the automated testers, or you can check whether it's accessible, and if it's not, then you can make some changes. And just try with a disabled person to go through it.
The next question was, after having championed inclusivity at Procter & Gamble, what steps can people take to be an inclusivity champion in their own companies?
I think what I found is that you're never alone. Like, I may have started this movement in the company, but there's an army of people who love working in this space. It's actually like the kind of feedback that I've had from people is that this, let's say the herbal essences, in people's entire lifetime of working at P&G, this project has been the most meaningful and impactful for them. And I hear this type of thing time and time again. And so I think just be brave and take the first step, and maybe even just start looking at your products and your services through the eyes of, you know, people with low vision, people with dexterity or strength issues, and really start getting some insights on where are the opportunities. Great.
Well, those were all the questions I had. I just wanted to finish with a tweet from my colleague Matthew Atkinson on Twitter. He said, just tuned into IOD24 conference and saw most of Sam Latif's ACE talk on inclusive design. I could identify with the empowerment that tech like the iPhone can bring for people with disabilities. And it was great to hear about Procter & Gamble's inclusion journey for employees and products. So that's a nice message from Matthew. And unless there's any other questions, yeah, so I'd like to say thank you as well. Patrick, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll take us out. So, and again, thank you very much, Sam. That was great stuff. If you like this session, hit that YouTube like button, and don't forget you can subscribe to youtube.com/inclusivedesign24 for future notifications. A reminder that Inclusive Design 24 is brought to you with thanks to our gold supporters, Barclays Access and Intopia, silver supporters, Adobe and Siteimprove, and our bronze supporters, Samsung Internet, DQ Systems, and the Basiello Group, and is captioned by MyClearText. Inclusive Design 24 will be back on the hour with Jo Conchetti with her talk, Imposter Syndrome, Perfectionism and Anxiety, Learning to be Kind to Yourself. Until then, see you later.